While watching water drain from a sink, have you ever placed your hand over the plug hole? If you have, you'll notice a slightly unnerving feeling as the drain desperately tries to suck you in. Initially, you reassure yourself that the hole's far too small to be of danger, but your mind usually wanders. What if it was larger? And what if it could suck you in? Gratefully, large plug holes don't exist in nature, and so then it must have been a very special person who thought that out of all the possible ways to stop a reservoir flooding, a gigantic plug hole, 500,000 times larger than the one in your bathtub, would be the sensible option. Welcome then to Lady Bower Reservoir, where there's not one, but two of these abominations. So why were glory holes introduced, and what would happen if you were sucked into one? The Lady Bower Shaft Spillway is one of the largest in the world, measuring 80 foot across. That's 8 foot more than Lake Berryessa's, which is another famous glory hole in the US. Close up, the shaft spillways are mightily impressive in size, but when you consider that Lady Bower holds 6.1 billion gallons of water, then by comparison they're actually remarkably small. This can be seen from above. Look how small the shaft spillways are in comparison to the size of the reservoir. It's like trying to drain your bath through a straw. So, could you be sucked into one of these shaft spillways? And if you were, what would happen? It's actually quite unlikely you'd be sucked in, because there's not usually more than a couple of inches of water above the spillway. The water therefore wouldn't be deep enough to swim in or even float in. Also, the sides of the shaft spillway are straight, and there's no lip at the top to sort of suck you over. I imagine the experience of being sucked towards one of these shaft spillways would be akin to being sucked towards the edge of a swimming pool. Once you get to the edge, you would need considerable effort to get over the top. However, should you find yourself in the nightmarish situation of being sucked towards a shaft spillway, the best thing to do would be to ensure your body is positioned vertically in the water to maximize your contact with the flat side of the shaft spillway. You could then push off and attempt to swim away. The absolute worst thing you could do is to float on the top of the water, a little bit like these guys. What would happen if you were unfortunate enough to be swept into one of the shaft spillways? Initially, you'd be knocked unconscious by one of the 25 concrete steps in the mouth of the shaft spillway. You would then fall approximately 20 meters onto solid concrete before being swept down a large 140-meter long tunnel, something resembling a prehistoric water slide, during which time you'd descend another 10 or 20 meters. In theory, you would then be swept out the bottom of the dam. However, according to the BBC, a representative from Trent Water, the owners of the dam, said that, in reality, you'd be stuck behind a metal fence at the bottom of the dam. I'm not sure this is actually true, but either way, your chances of survival would be extremely low.